Welcome to the Holistically Humble podcast. I'm your host, Katie, a registered holistic nutritionist, a yoga teacher, and a wellness enthusiast passionate about helping you thrive. This podcast is your space to explore holistic health, nervous system regulation, mindful living, and all of the tools that empower you to create balance in your body, mind, and soul. So whether you're here to deepen your wellness journey, find inspiration, or discover practical tips to live a healthier, more intentional life, you are in the right place, my friend. My mission is to simplify wellness, spark meaningful conversations, and help you to reconnect to your authentic self. Let's dive in and create a life that feels as good as it looks. Welcome to the Holistically Humble community. Hello, you lovely human. Welcome to the Holistically Humble podcast, or welcome back if you are returning. Hello, I see you. I hope you are enjoying your day, and you're going to enjoy it even more when you listen to this podcast episode. And I'm so excited to have a guest on this episode. It's been honestly probably like close to 2 months since I had a guest on. The last guest I had was my cousin, who is a psychotherapist. That was a really good episode. You should check that out. So typically with the Holistically Humble podcast, if I'm doing solo episodes, I like to deliver them in what I call bite-sized chunks. So like 30 minutes or less kind of vibe. That's just personally what resonates with me at this time of my podcast journey. But when I have a guest on, I like to have it go a little bit longer, right? Because we're having conversations, and I really love having guests on that are aligned with topics and the wellness umbrella ideas that I have either practiced or I'm interested in, or these are people that I have trained under or learned from, or somehow it just fits, right? Like I don't want to have guests on the podcast where I don't really know who they are. I don't know what they're doing. Maybe it'll evolve over time. I think it would be amazing to have some awesome, educated, world renowned experts on the show, in which case I would know what they're doing anyways, because I'd be following them. But today's podcast episode, she is amazing. Honestly, I first met her in December of 2019 through a phone call. And then in 2020, I took her 200-hour yoga teacher training. And it was local where I live. I looked into yoga teacher trainings and going somewhere and doing the immersive 30 days somewhere like Bali, Thailand, Costa Rica, something like that. Obviously, I would love to go and immerse myself in that sort of situation, environment, and meet people as well as go through that journey. But it wasn't accessible to me at that time. But I'm so lucky because my partner actually mentioned to me that I should look into doing something like a yoga teacher training. And so as soon as he said that, I was like, yes, I am on it. So I searched and I found Jay Suttonbrown. She is a guest on this podcast today. We dive into an awesome conversation all about yoga, all about hatha yoga and kundalini yoga. We talk about her journey, how she found yoga, and what led her to teaching and being a kundalini yoga teacher and a yoga teacher trainer. So I hope that you enjoy this episode. Grab your tea, go on your hot girl walk, commute to work, whatever it is, or commute to your yoga class and listen to this episode. If you aren't already subscribed to this podcast, following, rating, reviewing, downloading, all of those amazing things, please do it. It helps me so much, and it just keeps me going on this podcast journey. It's amazing. It's amazing. I love it. I love that you're here. And if you're watching me on YouTube, hello, I see you. And yeah, enjoy this episode. So welcome, Jay, to the Holistically Humble podcast. I wanted to start by asking you, can you share a bit about yourself and your journey with yoga? How did you first discover it, and what led you to where you are today?
Wow, how much time do you have? I'm a little older. My journey probably started about 25 years ago. I was working in social services and education. I was a special needs teacher, and working a lot with children who were who were dealing with living in women's shelters and other social environments. And beautiful work, big work, but it was a lot of work. And I think, like most people, I came to a practice that helped me to de-stress, to center, to be present in my being, because I was managing a lot of people's needs. And then that was a part of my work life at that point. And when we started our family, I was working 70 hours a week at that time. I knew I didn't want to do that after having children. And so I said to my husband, I think I'm going to go to Thailand and become a yoga teacher. And he said, do you have to go to Thailand? And the answer was no, because we lived in Vancouver. So nearly 20 years ago now, I started my yoga teacher training journey, and then everything sort of took off from there. I started obviously with our group of mummies and babes. I certified in prenatal as well and worked with young families in the beginning. And then it was just my passion point of working with yoga as an incredible tool that's accessible to so many, but also so varied and customizable that people could bring in these techniques into their life and live a more present, aware, connected, peaceful existence.
Beautiful. I know that's probably super summed up. And thank you for sharing. I know
You
there's
don't want
probably
your listeners to have to listen to it for 6 hours. I mean,
although you are lovely to listen to, and that is such an awesome story of how you got into it, because I'm sure as my listeners are listening to this, you may have heard yoga, you may have wanted to try it, you may have tried it, and everyone's experience is different. I know for me personally, and maybe we can dive into your experience too. My very first yoga class, I fucking hated it. It was a It was like I'm going to say I don't even know at the time. It was when I was in university and I was taking it as like an elective to the degree I was taking, a sport health and physical education degree. And I did it and I thought this will be great. And it was so fucking hard because at that point I was just so into sports and no focus on the quote unquote stretching that yoga provides. Very like that's the small aspect of it. But yeah, I hated it. And I was like, I'll never go back to this. And so I'm wondering, can you share your first experience with your yoga class?
So the nice part is my very actually the funny part that's parallel to that is when I was in university, and I went to university in California, everyone did yoga. And I was like, whatever. I don't want to do what everyone's doing. So I did Tai Chi and it was amazing and I loved it. So I fully did Tai Chi and all of my friends are standing in tree pose somewhere and I'm like, you guys are a bunch of joiners, you know, like I'm out of here. And it wasn't until I was, you know, kind of working as a teacher and working with social wellness. And it was also a university option because I was not only working, but you know, in University of Calgary, there was a lot of options at the uni. And so I tried it and I was like, oh, because what I needed in that moment was just a moment to breathe. I was still running and doing sprint triathlons with other people, but this provided a different insight. Um, and probably too, I also had a really great teacher that also can help. The last funny caveat on that is that when I went into yoga before I sort of went down the prenatal route and made people or had more of my children, I was a vinyasa yogi. I wore all black. I was like the hotter, the sweatier, the more intense. It was like it could seriously just move things out of my system. And now my love language is Kundalini. I wear white all the time. And I thought chanting was dumb. I'm like, why would anyone? That's so inaccessible. It just puts people off. Why would you do this? This is nuts. And, you know, give yourself a couple of decades and your toolkits grow and your experiences change and you have different kinds of different doorways, I would say, open. Like any practice that you do, from running or weight training or yoga, different doorways open if you stay with it for a while because it's never intended to be just a static thing. Our bodies aren't static. Our lives aren't static. The way that we interact in the world is not static. So we should expect that those shifts and changes they show up. I'm curious though, how did you get back in? If you're like, I
Yeah.
don't like this, I don't like this, how did you get back in?
Yeah, so obviously I was in the university course, so I had to complete it. So I had to go back. And that helped because I don't know why, but at the time we had to choose one pose to practice throughout the semester at the yoga class. And I chose downward facing dog, which I, again, absolutely hated. I thought it was so, because the stretching and the lengthening of your hamstrings and your calves when I was so physically active for so long was just very uncomfortable. And it was a journey that I got to begin to like downward facing dog because you do have to do it every day. You had to show a progress photo before and after, maybe even video. I can't remember at that time. But what actually got me to go back after the university class was I have rheumatoid arthritis and I was flared up in significant amount of my joints, which, as you are aware, if you practice, yoga like hatha yoga, vinyasa yoga, you need the knees to be working properly to do like 90% of the poses, I'm going to say. And
Mm-hmm.
so I went and to explore yoga because I had heard it would help with nervous system regulation and it could help with like, calming my mind, getting in touch with my body because I felt very disconnected to my body when it was extremely swollen and inflamed. And I went to a yoga studio in town. It was Town Yoga. And one of the teachers there, I had a conversation with, and she set me up in the back of the class. She showed me different alternatives for poses that I could do. So, for example, downward dog was 2 feet on the ground, 2 hands on the wall. And that
Mm-hmm.
was a variation of downward dog that was accessible to me for my wrists, my knees, and things like that. So she made it accessible. And it was like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, so I can do this. And it didn't feel weird and I didn't feel awkward. She just set me up at the back of the class, saw my name on the list, and that's just what happened. And so that's kind of
Mm-hmm.
like where it trickled into.
Yeah.
And yeah, as and you teach and you see all of these students come through your practices of and your teachings, but it just evolves from there. The love for it goes deeper than the physical poses.
I think there's a big important point in that because so many people have misconceptions and sometimes friends and neighbors I know, we're all out in the socials, but sometimes Instagram really doesn't serve the idea of accessibility in the practice. And as soon as you can touch in on that place, you start to see the accessibility in your life and the accessibility, all the different ways we can approach something versus trying to morph ourselves into some mold that is supposed to look like something else, she said with air quotes. And so it's really really critical. I think that is the truest art of yoga, the unifying of the various aspects of ourselves instead of choosing some and casting others into judgment. How do I bring about, okay, so my body's asking for this. Now, if I can figure out a way to honor that, that actually teaches me far more. I mean, the beauty and the wonder of taking good care of my body, it's the only vessel we get, but also how I can apply that lesson in other aspects of my life, your life, how we move through. My favorite part is when people say yoga is stretching, and I go, because we start there. You start in the body. The body's what we have. It's what we know. It's what we realize when we do these practices. We're spending most of our time forgetting about, unless it's hurting us or something else is happening. But it's so much bigger as an approach to life, and at the same point, doesn't need to be intimidating. I tell people, you've showed up for your period of time. If you just want to sit here the entire time, if you want to lay in the fetal position the entire time, what do you need? You've served your needs in the first step by showing up and carving out this time. Now, each breath, each moment, what do you need? Can you hear that, respond to it, and really be in service? That can change people's stress and reactivity and all of those wonderful and delicious things.
Absolutely. I completely agree. And we'll dive into Kundalini yoga in a second here, but I wonder if you could talk about maybe, going back to when you were hardcore more into vinyasa or hatha
Yep.
or those styles of yoga, like
Mhm.
the competition, like, yeah, just like you said, like you're just trying to tune into what you
Competing,
need.
comparing, yeah, competing, comparing, and complaining. Those are the big three C's, right? I go to class and I'm competing with what they look like in their pose or in their clothes or in whatever else. Eyes are open. I'm externally focused. And the whole component, the whole basis of this practice is to take your senses within, right? Pratyahara is all about, can I bring my senses inward to myself and spend a moment here? And that's tough in a world that teaches us, shiny, everything's competing for our attention. Everything comes in a 30-second soundbite. And reels, I didn't hear three words that I liked, so I'm moving on, right? And that's kind of this place of, it's a skill set you can develop to be with yourself. And I know you may have listeners out there going, I won't be in there. I won't be with that self. There's a uncomfortable feeling, and there's some judgment, and there's some shame, and it's like, those are there to get your attention about areas that need your attention. Maybe your acceptance, your forgiveness, your love, your cultivation of a space within yourself. And that's really that driving sense of coming inward. And beautifully taught hatha and vinyasa classes honor that. Even if eyes might be a little bit open, not everybody's staring and trying to do, my other favorite phrase is, yoga is not jazzercise. This is not a
Mhm.
choreographed jazzercise class. I don't care if you're in the same breath that I am. Use your inhale to move. Use your
Mhm.
exhale, and we can all look like popcorn, because we're not here to be a Cirque du Soleil performance. We're here to have an experience. And Sally's going to breathe at a different pace than Joe, than everyone else in the room. But we almost have to relearn how to honor that for ourselves, and how to feel a sense of acceptance and build that confidence to do that within our bodies and within community. And when it happens, when people cultivate that community together, and they can be connected and yet sovereign and have that personal space, that energy is infectious. It's contagious, like in the best kind of way. It's like everyone, all of a sudden, everyone's uplifting everyone else in this sense of independence and yet the collective. Those are some beautiful, beautiful spaces to be.
Yes. And when I first found you, let's just say when I first found you, I was in a place where I was hating the situation I was in with my job. I was an insurance
I remember.
broker,
Yep.
running around to dealerships, and it felt so out of alignment. And I remember it was December 2019. And I was so upset. And my boyfriend was like, why don't you look into doing like a yoga teacher training? Because at that point, I had a pretty solid yoga practice, the physical aspect of it, going to classes. And I Googled yoga teacher training in Nanaimo, and I found you. And I think within a week, I was messaging you. I had a conversation. I don't even think it was over Zoom. I think it was over phone because the
Mhm.
world went crazy in
we were
2020.
we were still, yeah, exactly, still filming it. I didn't even know what Zoom was
Yes.
until somewhere mid 2020, or April 2020, when people are like, we got to find a way to reconnect, and we're all in our living room.
That was me and the yoga teacher training. I was a 2020 graduate of your 200-hour yoga teacher training.
Onto a Zoom room.
Yeah, we had to navigate that and figure that
Yeah.
out. And so I just like instantly connected with your energy and your teachings. And I didn't know what Kundalini yoga was, but I know that you were offering it in Nanaimo. It was a Hatha Kundalini focused 200-hour yoga teacher training, and you offered it on weekends, which was accessible to me. I think it was every other weekend for 4 months or something like that. And
Yep.
so I jumped in
Same,
head first.
same pattern, honey. When a recipe works, we don't break it. But yeah, you jumped in, and just, I have to give you kudos, and the that particular cohort, because to decide, when we were all trying to figure out technology, and to be immediately torn away from the cocoon of that physical community energy, and to hold your own on the other side of a screen, that's
Yeah,
props.
that
That was
was
huge.
That was wild. And I was really glad we were able to finish it and navigate it because I think we had a month left or something like that. But I remember in the training, because I didn't really know Kundalini. I think I had been to two
Mm.
classes at that point, and you said in like maybe the first day or the first day you were focusing on Kundalini yoga, this is the wildest shit you ever do.
Yep. That's that's
so,
it.
so can you talk about Kundalini yoga?
Yes. So the first thing I always tell people, if you're listening to this, don't Google it. That's like Googling,
Mm-hmm.
I have a spot, and you're going to find all kinds of things, from things that are not Kundalini yoga, but they put the word Kundalini, to snakes, to all kinds of interesting things. But to break it down, and the reason I do my teacher trainings in both traditions is because they're very complementary. Your hatha based practices, all the way through vinyasa or power yogas, are about balancing the polarities. So we're looking at the integration of the self is coming through finding that sense of balance, from the inhale, the exhale, the left to the right, the up, the down, the joints, the muscles, all those beautiful things. We're using the body as a tool to create balance, and then allowing that balance to move inward. It's also very insightful and respectful of the human form, and letting us embody, be in our human form, especially in our modern world where we're just attached to screens, tickety tackety, we're brains on wheels, kind of moving around. Kundalini evolved a little bit later, and later in terms of 2000, 4,000 years ago, a little bit later on that spectrum, but embodied, it's the yoga of awareness. So as opposed to asana, or a posture that we would use in hatha, we're going to move into something called kriya, which is specific moves for specific purposes. And of course, all yoga is about awareness, but we're working with the body, the nervous system, the endocrine system, in a very different sort of series, a different sort of pattern, so that we can be really, all of a sudden, there's this awareness and presence of my thoughts, what I'm focused on, where I'm at, how I feel about my energy. Do I even know what my energy is? And it is intentionally, whereas a beautifully constructed hatha or vinyasa class, you might be on the floor, you work your way up, there's, this peak of energy, and then a return and a resettling. Kundalini is like, stand up, sit down, finish this, nope, finish that, go over here, go over there, and it helps to break the bonds of the head brain, or our thought patterns, or where we get stuck in ruts, because it's unexpected what's coming. The mind can't predict and do all the competing, comparing. It still might complain once in a while. I won't say that. I don't think there's any form of yoga where the mind doesn't complain at some point, but there is that place that we can change and completely shift our lens and our perspective and our experience of our energy. So Kundalini yoga uses big sound. Vibration is a big part of it. So I'm a short woman who carries a big speaker. And so there's a lot of sense of that power, vibration, and sound. There is movement, there is pranayama, and then right in the middle, you might drop into a 7-minute meditation, right? And people are like, what's happening here? And I usually try to say, if you haven't experienced this, it's going to be a wild ride, but see what comes after, and maybe a couple of days after that. And people will be like, I went to this class, and then I laughed, and then I realized I was really sad, and then I figured all this, and and I just felt so clear. And it's like, that's the intention of the Kundalini practice. A lot of the work I've been doing recently in the last few years, since 2020, I would say in the last 5 years, is I've been studying with some of my teachers, working on the impact of emotions directly as a spiritual practice. So we take a lot of emotions, and there can be a lot of different spiritual bypassing, if you will. Yogis wouldn't be angry, or you shouldn't feel anger. Shouldn't is a great word. Or shame. There has been in the past this effort to cleave off anything that doesn't feel whole, positive, beautiful, connected, integrated. And yes, source has all of that. peace, joy, connection, acceptance, all of it says like, yes, I love it. But what is the anger about? What is the shame? What is the grief? What these are messages from this embodied state of being human saying something needs your attention. Bring that to your practice and be with it rather than trying to go around it. And full disclosure, in my early days of practice in that challenging work environment, it was really nice to what I would like to say. It was like, what do we call it? What's that sport, Katie, where you have the pole and you catapult yourself over another pole?
Pole vault or something like
I think
that.
it's pole vault. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's it. So imagine that for many people, their experiences in yoga are to pole vault. It's like you hit your yoga mat, you pole vault, you're up into this beautiful connected space. And then the yoga class ends and you get in your car and you start screaming at the car that's coming at you,
Mm-hmm.
right? Just it's gone.
Mm-hmm.
One of the series of works that I'm like, a lot of the courses that I'm teaching now have an element of, instead of pole vaulting, that access to pure awareness, that access to that place of peace, that is available. Now, what if we use that as a foundation and invite in the things that feel uncomfortable in the, you say who, you say when, you say how much. It's not, a baptism by fire with those kinds of sensations, but we learn how to invite them in, ask them what they need in that embodied presence of yoga. And then all of a sudden something goes, oh, I've been sitting here being so mad at Fred for the blah, blah, blah. And actually, I'm just feeling insecure. Oh, I'm just afraid that person might not be happy with me. Blah, blah. And so we get into even more interesting and deeper layers.
Mm-hmm.
Kundalini has been that work has been done in Kundalini for a long time, but now we have, it's been, I would say, in the last 20 years of, as all humans are becoming more aware of the importance of emotional literacy and emotional health. Thank you, Brene Brown.
Mm-hmm.
Kundalini has codified things they've always used in the past with some more accessible language that supports people in that journey. So yeah, so we do both so that we have that access to energy awareness and the beauty that comes through Kundalini practices. But Hatha is the foundation of restoring balance and finding the physical integration. So I think when people have an opportunity to study a multi-tradition training, their respect levels and are high, and then their flexibility is higher too, because they're not like, this is the way, this is the yoga. Like,
Mm-hmm.
there are many yogas. Which one would you like to engage? What brings you joy? What fires you up?
Yeah, I really enjoyed that about your training because of the options. And I remember in one of the parts of the Kriya and Kundalini yoga, it's a virtuous pose, victory.
Victory, you got it.
Victory. Okay, we were in victory for I don't know how long, and I at the end of
Forever.
it, I needed to know. I needed to know how long we were in it, and you wouldn't answer it, and that was like an interesting situation I had internally because I was like, why did I need to know? We're done now, or like, yeah, it was just like an interesting. It was you were just like basically telling me that's what we're doing, that you're exploring what's going on, and yeah, and to go on top of that, you also said something, and I think maybe I've already said this, or it's just something that you say a lot is Kundalini yoga is the jet fuel of yoga.
Yes.
Can you speak to that?
Yeah. So again, as a person, and cards on the table, if I was a person who did enjoy vinyasa, then clearly some of that heat, some of that, Agni, Manipura sort of levels of yoga were something that served me or that I was attracted to. But what tends to happen is that in many of our hatha practices, we can spend so much time perfecting the asana that we aren't doing the deeper layers of work.
Mm-hmm.
Right, we're staying in the manomaya kosha, right, we're staying in the physical body, and we it takes perhaps a lot more time for that to permeate, because it's a, am I doing it right? Does it feel good? Am I doing what the other class is doing? Have I learned the poses? There's a big sort of arc there. Kundalini yoga, because it uses a variety of repetitive actions. You're going to do this thing. Maybe it's like, think of a quarter squat. We're going to do quarter squats for 3 full minutes. And, you know, if you watch people in the beginning, they're like, yay. And then like 40 seconds in, they're like, whoa, okay. Right. And you get to this point, and the work of the teacher, the work of the guide is, where do you need to be in this? Are you pushing too far? Are you hanging back because you don't want to? It's finding that level that you're being present. So you're not hurting yourself. You're not going too far, but it has something to where now I'm within this wave of action, of vibration, of energy, and I'm working with it. This creates a lot of like bing, 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 illuminative moments for folks, because it's not simply, you know, adjust your, you know, externally rotate your knee or, you know, your thigh a quarter of an inch and then realign your toe to the, there's less talking about your body when you're in each Kriya, which gives you more time to be present with what you feel and learn and trust yourself to make those little adjustments. And the crowning jewel on that is, and if folks don't haven't practiced Kundalini before, our practice is done with our eyes shut. And people are like, what? And I always make the joke, you know, if you're new to Kundalini, keep your eyes open as much as you need to, or shut them down when you feel comfortable, open them back up when you're like, I'm not sure where you're at. I have clearly a teeny tiny voice that's very hard to hear. So I have a big presence, and there is a sense of, I promise to let you know when something's going to change. So trust yourself to stay in this moment and notice if you really want to get out of it, or if you're like really happy and hope doesn't end, or you're working with it and trying to find your own rhythm and safe physical space. I mean, I do lots of option 1, 2, 3, 4, because accessibility is my dharma. A squat can be 1/8 of an inch, or it can be several feet. It depends on what your unique knees and body needs. But yeah, and I have, you know, that's the other funny part, is that it's a practice that you don't age out of. I've got women and men in my classes in their 70s, and the same class that I have people in their 30s and 40s. And, you know, there's 5 people that use chairs and sit on chairs to do their meditation because that just feels better for their knees and hips. And then I've got people on the floor. Like, it cultivates this to speak to your positive experience of being able to have your space in the room and meet your practice where you're at, whether that's on the wall. It's not kind of a uniform thing. I will say, though, in my practice of Kundalini yoga, if you are auditorily sensitive, I am not the practitioner for you. There is big sound, right? There is big sound, and there are many practices that don't have as big of sound. And there are Kundalini practitioners that take a very soft nod approach. Nod is the sacred sound current. But just for me personally, I like a good beat from here, you know, here and there and elsewhere. Did I answer your question about Kundalini? Was there something I missed? Is there something else you want to chat about with Kundalini yoga?
No, that was great. I think you really touched on a lot of pieces there, like nuggets for people to take in and take with what leave what doesn't resonate, take what does, and go from there. But just in terms of like your own specific yoga journey, and then you are a teacher, you have trainings, and you do these not only 200 but 500, and experienced. I saw experienced 500. Maybe you could share one piece, or maybe multiple pieces. What has been some of the most profound lessons or insights that you've gained, maybe on and off the mat, either as a student or a teacher, or both?
I think what happens when we begin our journey, and it doesn't matter what journey we begin, marriage, yoga, a partnership, making people, doesn't matter what one it is. In the early stages of the journey that we embark on, we're enamored with the learning and the joy and all of the wonderful pieces that come into it. And of course we hit challenges and roadblocks. There's something that definitively always we can bump into because we're on the learning planet, right? I like to tell people, if you think you're going to do yoga and then never experience challenge again, those are dead people's goals. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's not the learning planet that we have signed up for. So there's that phase of the newness and the joy of that, and working through the challenges you experience them. And then there's something in my tradition, or something that was really powerful to me, called the 5 stages of wisdom. So in that component, you know, Karampad, you've never done yoga before. Maybe you hate it, but then you find you really like it. And you're just like, ooh, and that's Karampad. Sarampad is you go and maybe do a teacher training, and you're getting that knowledge and you're pulling it in and having that experience. But the most challenging component for most people is what's called Shaktipad. And Shaktipad is this moment where you have to decide, are you going to do it just like somebody else? Are you going to do it because your tradition always taught it that way? Or do you begin to trust in yourself that you can bring tradition information in and then share it with your own unique voice, signature, and who you are? Because there's a reason you were called to this experience. And you're not going to, whether it's parenting, you're not going to parent just like your parents. You're not going to, you know, there's going to be these components where you imbue it with your own stamp, creativity, authenticity, part of your personhood. And that is the moment where you shift towards what's known as sahaj. And it's the idea of wisdom, because you know what's yours, and you know what you don't know, which is very important. Back in those earlier pads, we finished 200-hour teacher training, and there's times people come out and they're like, I am the expert of yoga, hear me roar, right? And you're like, you have learned a lot and this is awesome, but you are on the beginning of your road. Like, please enjoy. So so Shaktipad is really, I think, where I did the most learning. And I, in that sense of accessibility, I had feedback back in the 90s and early 2000s. If you just lost 10 pounds, we'd give you another class. And just watching where we've come as far as body shaming or ideals of what people had to have, you have to have this diet. I'm like, everyone gets to choose that for themselves. How we approach ahimsa and do no harm, or compassion is what I translated into. Rather than don't harm, how are you being more compassionate? And us judging those around us for their choices is not always the most compassionate stance. And you balance that compassion with satya, with some truth, like the ability to ask a curious question. I'm curious how that aligns for you in your practice. How is that working? Those are the elements where we make the changes. But Shaktipad is honoring the sense that you can be uniquely you. You can be Jay Suttonbrown and throw down a few rock and roll classes in your yoga classes, or occasionally drop an F-bomb. And it doesn't mean that your spiritual path isn't as deep and valid and connected as anyone else's. And to kind of soften those needs for it to look a certain way. Because I think that is something that our field has perhaps had some disservice around, that, oh, I would have to be this size, or I'd have to have this diet, or I'd have to have this belief system, or I have to, in order to do this work. And this works for everybody. Yoga is the integration of you, whether you have another spiritual belief. It is not a religion. It is a practice of intention of being human in a human world.
Yeah, so great. And I remember when we were in the training and you told me accessibility is what I'm going to be looking at within the training, or I can't remember if there was like a specific project or anything around it, but I was like, what does that even mean?
Because with sometimes people think, I'm going to go in and the right way to teach this pose is this, then this, then this. And it's not that those aren't the building blocks. The building blocks are important, but can you see how that might work for a differently abled body, for an aging body, for a body riddled with arthritis,
Mm-hmm.
for, and that doesn't mean we have to be an expert in everything, but can we see where the energetic intention of that movement is? Um, it, let's take wheel is a back bend, right? So if
Mm-hmm.
the palms are up, you're up in wheel pose. In our modern society, that's not going to be accessible to many people. So the energetic principle is, what if your hands were on the earth and the heart center is lifted and you are seated on the ground? You have the energetic form of wheel without necessarily inverting your spine into a perfect
Mm-hmm.
arc. And that sort of doorway in to see what is the principle that we're working with, that is a skill set that can be taught and is important for yoga teachers of this modern era to be able to embrace, because we want everyone to feel at home in their body, in their practice, in their space. And not every spine can work the same way. Not every, so when we're doing practicums, which is your exam time for yoga teacher training, I'll throw things in that say, this is your clientele. These are your students who showed up today. Adjust so that you are ready to offer them a practice that is a meaningful journey home for them. They are having the experience, not look at me, I'm the teacher and I can do all these cool things and I can stand on one fingertip with my toe in my ear. It's great if you can do that. That is wonderful. Awesome. That's serving the needs of the people who came to have an experience that day.
Yeah, that really, really did help serve me throughout my teaching journey thus far and my own personal journey too. Like, how can I make this successful for me today? And I just thought that was, yeah, that was a really good takeaway. And so for anyone who's interested in possibly taking a yoga teacher training with Jay, just know that that's going to be in there and you're going to learn, here are your options. And not only here are your options within the yoga pose, but start here. Everyone start here and then move up versus I know I've been to some yoga classes, especially after taking your training, where they're like, start here and then go back and do this if you
If you
can't.
can't do this, if you can't do this, I call that backing up the train. No
Yeah.
one wants to feel shamed out of not being able to do what everyone else is doing.
Yes.
So everyone can have a warm up, and as we learn and teach and guide, you are welcome to say, we are moving into wheel pose, and those people who it's in their practice, they know they're fine, they're already on their way. But what I tend to do is say, we're going to start by opening into this space, and if I've said wheel and they want to be there, honor their journey, have a
Mhm.
good time, enjoy yourself. But everybody can move in. And what I find is, what happens for people who these more challenging expressions of these physical abilities has been their norm, there are times that they actually realize, why am I constantly pushing myself? And they give themselves this opportunity to try something new and find this whole new space of breath or a whole new opportunity that isn't some simply destination thinking, because yoga is not a destination. It's an embodiment, it's a process. And if you're thinking there's a there, you've already lost the now, you've lost the
Mhm.
here, because you're just focused on there, which is an illusion of getting there. You can be there, but are you here?
Yes.
No matter where you go, there you are. So are you here? So yeah, that is that wonderful. I mean, this is why, how could you teach yoga for 25 years? Well, I'm sure if I taught the exact same thing every day, that I would be bored out of my tree. But the landscape of being human is a rich tapestry, and being able to find ways of accessibility, um, uh, of all kinds of things, from feelings to bodies to communities to diverse opinions to all of that. There's lots of juicy work in the world for us to do. And when people say, but you've been training yoga teachers for, more than 15 years, don't we have enough? There's a lid for every pot, and whatever it is that you are looking to share in the world, there are people who need to hear that. And it's not about collecting humans, it's about supporting each other in our life journey.
Yes, I love that exactly. And with that being said, all of your teachings, you've been teaching for over 15 years, the yoga teacher trainings. Can you speak
Mhm.
to that as like what maybe some upcoming ones? Or I know you're also offering some other things, just speaking on your offerings.
Oh, you're a very sweet and generous human, Katie. The actual, it's kind of funny. I've been working with, so my advanced teacher training for yoga teachers is a module based program. But there is one module that is absolutely required. So the advanced teacher training, if you want to join in, begins in September. We're actually going to be at Sea Glass Yoga Studio, which was a birth from a student who did her 500 hour with me, and then she created this space. So again, it's always the intent to go back and support each other and lift each other up and share that work. So we're going to go out there. It's beautiful. It's by the ocean. Um, so
Is
that
that
is
all in
starting in the
person?
fall. Yeah, all in person. So I do all in person training, period. My courses for certain kinds of things have online elements, and that's for some accessibility. Like sometimes I have folks coming from as high as Campbell River down, and so the Wednesday night kind of thing, they can do that, but then the weekends they need to be immersive. But teacher training, advanced teacher training, and 200-hour teacher training, although that wasn't part of your experience due to unforeseen circumstances. I believe that the connected, we need each other, we need people, we need to teach people, we need to be with real bodies in order to get the fullest experience that we can. So the fall training is for advanced teachers, and then if you're looking to become a 200-hour, the Hatha Kundalini teacher training begins in January, and we'll be up at the Bethlehem Retreat Center for that. And so it's the same. I work the same formulas for everyone, which is on average 2 weekends per month, so that you can still have a family or a job or other things going on in your life. Because I wasn't able, when I wanted to take the journey, I had small children at home. I couldn't leave for 30 days and go do teacher training. And I think that another component within that is you need time for integration. So where the immersion can
Mhm.
serve you, and that, it's a beautiful experience. I'm not in any way trying to undercut it, but to explain my rationale, which is there's a lot that we work with. You need a little bit of time to let that settle into your system, resonate, think on it, be able to work with it. So, different learning styles for different people, for sure. If you are like, I have no interest in teacher training, but I'd like to do some other stuff, 21 stages of meditation. I have 2 spaces left, but that's fairly intensive. That's a 5-day meditation course. We meditate from 8 in the morning till 5 in the evening. There are some movement breaks. This is not Vipassana where you go into silence for 8 hours. It's breaking down the meditation process to realize that you're not expected to sit down and then all thinking goes away. It's
Mhm.
working with our human condition and accessing deeper and deeper layers of awareness. And sometimes committing yourself to 5 days where you normally might sort of pull the ripcord and get out, you're like, like, because there's nowhere to go. And I
Yeah.
don't mean that ominously. I know it sounded a little bit like creepy, ominous laughter, but I've taught it enough times to watch people go, I had no idea. And it's because it's very natural. You can sit down to meditate and like your eyes peeking open, or is it time yet? Has it been 11 minutes? Like,
Mhm.
how long have I been here? The brain wants that distractive escape hatch. And so 21 stages of meditation, just sort of in a very small supportive group, allows us to do something a little different.
When does that start?
21 stages of meditation starts on April 16th.
Okay.
However, people would need to be registered by the 12th, I believe, primarily just so that we have the right number. You get a little booklet, like you get materials that come with it. So I just need to be able to have time to make sure it's all printed.
Amazing. And then I think there's one more thing about I feel like it's targeted in your words towards the older crowd of
I just started the spiritual path for middle age.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's intended sort of for women over 50. It's full, but you could come, and if that's a high interest, come and chat with me. Accessibility is my dharma. If you wanted to come in for, one portion of one workshop or something to that effect, we could look at something like that. But that program's already filled and started. So that
Okay.
sort of realigning and looking, giving ourselves an opportunity of stopping the language around anti-aging, because that means I'm against aging,
Hmm.
and embrace the aging. Like there's wisdom in that. There is that space past Shakti Pad, right? Let's move towards wisdom and what that feels like versus lamenting things that we've already grown through.
Amazing. Yeah, thank you for sharing all of that. And then in terms of your social media, I will make sure to link it down below in the show notes. And I just appreciate your time. Is there any final thoughts that have come up during this podcast that you'd like to share?
Um, at the risk of sounding patronizing, just how beautiful it has been to observe your journey, Katie, from 5 years ago to now, from not doing something that lights you up to watching you light up completely and light up other people's lives with your work. That is a profound, and it's why I do what I do. Is it's we don't extinguish our candles by lighting more candles. And in a world currently, we need more candles. We need more light.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And your yoga teacher training honestly was the fire that I needed in order to make some changes. So I'm just grateful for you for your teachings. There's also drop-in classes, Kundalini that you teach in Nanaimo,
Mhm.
also online.
If you, yeah, yeah. So those can be accessed online. I
Okay.
do, yeah. So manipurayogacollege.com. You'll find everything there. I teach Wednesday evenings and Thursday mornings. On average, courses run at different times, trainings run at different times. I don't teach in the summer because I'm a sailor by nature. So if you're looking for classes, you have until the end of June, and then July and August, I will be. That's another form of self-care for me, is to take off to the sea.
Hmm.
But yeah, I feel very blessed and very privileged to continue in a line of work that I love. But you can always reach out at any point. And thank you so much for having me, Katie.
Thank you, Jay.
Satnam.